It started with a threat. 48 hours. Those were the words of Andrew Holness. 48 hours to apologize or face what he described as serious diplomatic consequences. 48 hours to bow, to recant words which were not an insult, but truth. I heard it. The world heard it. And I'll tell you today, I do not play by the rules of arrogance. I respond to the people. The people who suffer in poverty, who witness corruption on a daily basis, who weep for justice and closed down by the very people who claim to represent them. So no, I won't apologize. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever, because truth doesn't bow to power. When I addressed the people in Kingston, I didn't travel there to butter up politicians or to pander to the press. I traveled there to speak as an African son, as a movement leader who knows what exploitation looks like and who has seen how corruption devours a nation from the inside. I spoke because I've witnessed the same disease spread around the world. Suits-wearing men and flag-waving men, but robbing their own until they have nothing. I witnessed it in my own nation before we stood up. I witnessed it in Africa, and yes, I witnessed it in Jamaica too. And when I said those things, I knew they would sting. But sometimes the wound must be inflicted before it can heal. Prime Minister Holness proclaimed, I insulted Jamaica. No, brother, I did not insult Jamaica. I was speaking on behalf of Jamaica. I was speaking on behalf of the mother who worked 2 jobs and yet cannot feed her child because politicians are stealing what is hers. I was speaking on behalf of the youth who graduate with dreams but no opportunity, because the riches of the nation have been devoured by greed. I was speaking on behalf of those who hear promises daily of development while watching clinics close and roads crumble. I spoke for the market vendor who counts the coins at end of day and prays next week will yield more, only to find the price of living rising and the promises of the leaders to splat like rain upon a tin roof, loud, hollow, and giving no shelter. I spoke for the teacher whose classroom is full-breasted, whose voice is firm but whose pay is sparse, for the nurse who toils late covering bodies while lines and budgets for health persist read and unanswered, for the farmer who tills the soil with calloused hands and receives crumbs while contracts and subsidies are private winnings. These are not abstractions. These are real faces with names, with children, with dreams. When I name their pain by name, I do not shame Jamaica. I commend it. I commend its people. By denying them permission for their pain to be smeared with diplomatic circumlocutions. When I said what I said, I did not mean to bruise the dignity of the island. I wanted to awake it. There is a difference between wounding pride and calling for justice. Pride is a crown that feels heavier when it's left unchallenged. Dignity isn't an action but a doing. To protect the dignity of a nation, you must protect the life of its people. If defending reputation means hiding decay festering beneath the surface, then reputation is an insecure mask, not a shield. I would not help to hide decay. I shall not stand idly by and watch the truth traded for the convenience of a sanitized tale. You conflate criticism with insult because you are afraid of the mirror. The mirror doesn't tease, it shows. And when politicians gaze into the mirror for what it is, broken, compromised, defective, the impulse is to break the glass rather than repair what is broken. My words were not a punch to Jamaica's conscience. They were a call to its conscience. Wake up, take back what is yours, and make your leaders account. That is solidarity. That is love. I want to say this to you. When I stand Up for what is right, I do not stand as a president of Burkina Faso alone. I stand as a man who believes that black nations from Africa to the Caribbean must have leaders who serve and not sell. You give me 48 hours. My ancestors suffered 400 years of chains. And you think that I will bend due to your countdown? I don't measure truth in terms of hours. I measure it in terms of generation. Your clock may tick in your parliament, but history doesn't march as per your command. When I spoke, I said, leadership is not a throne. It is a burden, a sacred duty. Leadership is not meant to be comfortable. It is meant to be heavy. It is not a crown of gold. It is a crown of thorns worn by those willing to sacrifice their sleep, their comfort, and sometimes their safety for the welfare of their people. A good leader wakes up concerned about the hungry, not about the headlines. He walks around the markets, not just the marble hall. He hears the heartbeat of the nation, in the suffering of its poorest, not in the applause of its richest. But when leaders forget that, when they begin to believe that leadership is a privilege and not a responsibility, they stop serving and start ruling. They stop listening and start commanding. They stop looking down to lift the people up. They look down to oppress them. They utilize the nation as family property, the treasury as household inheritance, and the suffering of the people as a statistic. To be controlled, not a wound to be healed. That is when leadership meets its demise, and tyranny dons its mask. Jamaica, I did not to your earth to shame you. I did not come to disparage your people or mock your independence. I came to remind you and your government that the spirit of this island was not forged in surrender. It was burned in defiance. You are a nation born of conflict, born of rebellion, born of the fires, of people who would not kneel even when shackles were around their necks. You are the children of people who broke the whip with valor, who faced the cannon with faith, who knew that freedom was not offered but seized. You were the country of the Maroons, warriors who carved liberty into the mountains when slavery tried to blot them out. You were the country of Nanny, a female who pushed back empires, who commanded men with nothing but fire in her voice and faith. You were the country of Marcus Garvey, a prophet who called to the black world to rise, to construct, to once more believe in its greatness. These names are not history. They are mirrors. They are reminders that courage runs in your blood. And I came to awaken that courage, not to insult it. So I ask, with the same love that made me speak in the first place, why now, Jamaica? Why do you let men who live like kings, while the people suffer, tell you who to listen to? Why do you let those who sit in air-conditioned offices decide which truth is allowed and which one is forbidden? Why do you let fear muzzle your voice when your ancestors brayed against much more powerful powers? A leader who loves his people does not fear being criticized. He welcomes it because he knows that the people's voice keeps him in check. But when a leader begins to muzzling voices, when he associates only with those who praise him, he becomes a prisoner of his own ego. Power without responsibility is poison. And that poison is seeping in, not only in Jamaica, but in our black nations all over the world. Leadership is not a matter of prestige. It is a matter of purpose. It is not about having your face plastered on posters. It is about having your heart in service. When leaders start to seek riches, when they start to measure success in terms of luxury instead of legacy, the people are left behind. And that is why I spoke, because I see a country better than this. I see a people with warriors' hearts, being guided by those who have lost memory of what it is to struggle for what is right. I did not come as an invader but as a reminder that power needs to give way to the truth, that leadership needs to be answerable to the people, and that nations born in rebellion cannot survive on obedience. Jamaica, your flag is not colors. It is a story. Black for resilience, green for hope, gold for strength. But those colors don't mean anything if your leaders abandon responsibility. The gold should represent opportunity, not greed. The green should represent growth, not corruption. The black should represent resilience, not silence. So no, I did not come to shame you. I came to remind you of your greatness. The greatness that your ancestors fought for. The greatness that your youths are still longing for. And if my words are on fire, let them burn off the lies which have changed your fate. For leadership is not a seat to occupy. It is a fire to endure. And those who cannot endure its heat have no right to endure it. Andrew Holmes, you say you hold your country's honor, but honor does not lie in words. It lies in action. If you ever valued Jamaica's honor, you would fight corruption with the same fire you used to vent against me. You would apologize to your country for allowing poverty to grow while wealth is concentrated in the hands of individuals. You would apologize for your silence. You have upheld when foreign entities exploit your resources. But you do not stand in front of cameras and demand an apology from me. I will deny you that pleasure because the apology you crave would not heal Jamaica. It would bury the truth. You term me an outsider. Listen to me. I am no outsider to injustice. I am no stranger to oppression. I am no foreigner to struggle. The language of truth carries no passport. When I speak out against corruption, I speak the same language your grandparents spoke when they struggled for freedom. I am your brother, not your enemy. But you, Mr. Holness, have decided to view me as a threat. Because the truth is daunting to individuals who spout lies. You dared me with 48 hours. Do you have any idea what I spent my 48 hours doing? I listened. I listened to Jamaicans' voices. Not those in Parliament, but those on the streets. Those who spoke softly. He's right. Those who shouted. At last someone spoke to us what we know. I heard the students who shared me on their phones. I heard the women who, in their words, this man spoke for us. I heard the youth who marched, not on my behalf, but because they were tired of silence. That is the power of truth. You can't silence it with a deadline. You can't erase it with authority. When truth speaks, it multiplies. Some call that I broke diplomatic protocol. Let me remind you, protocol is not ethics. Diplomacy devoid of honesty is hypocrisy. We've had enough of leaders who smile at each other in conferences while their people go hungry. Enough of polite deception. Enough of empty promises. If what I said discomforted you, that means it hits the nerve of truth. And if you can't handle truth in your own household, perhaps your household needs cleansing, not safeguarding. You assert I should uphold sovereignty. I do. But sovereignty belongs to the people, not to politicians. Sovereignty is not a battering ram to hide behind. It is a mandate to rule justly. When a government is made a business, when power is made into private property, sovereignty perishes. And when sovereignty perishes, it is the duty of every conscious being to speak I shall not remain silent while black nations are drowning in corruption and foreign dependency. You tried to make this into an epic of pride. You tried to arouse nationalism against truth. But nationalism without justice is mere ego. You cannot love your flag while closing your eyes to the people it symbolizes. You cannot defend your country by silencing others who bear its sores. Patriotism is not blind loyalty to power. Patriotism is fervent loyalty to truth. Let the world hear me today. I, Ibrahim Traoré, will never apologize for defending the dignity of the poor. I will never apologize for exposing corruption. I will never apologize for speaking truth to leaders who forget their duties. If this makes me your enemy, so be it. But no, I did not come to spoil Jamaica's good name. I came here to stand up for the Jamaican spirit your system has been betraying. You call it foreign interference. I call it common struggle. Because the chains that bound Africa and the Caribbean were forged in the same hands. We were parted by seas but united by suffering. And now when one of us speaks, it should not be taken as an intrusion. It should be heard as an echo of liberty. They term me radical. If truth is radical, then I shall wear that badge as a badge of honor. They term me dangerous. Yes, dangerous to corruption, to hypocrisy, to the comfortable deceptions that weaken states. For when men begin to think, when they begin to question, the walls of tyranny tremble. That is why you fear my words, Mr. Holness, not because they are false, but because they awaken your people to a state of awareness. And let me say this to the Jamaican young people who stood up, who cried out, who heard my message. You are not rude. You are awake. You are the heartbeat of your nation. Do not let them tell you that demanding accountability is treason. The treason is silence. The insult is poverty in a country of promise. The disrespect is when leaders exchange power for greed. Stand firm. Speak. Organize. Build. Jamaica's futures do not belong to one man's ego. It is your courage. They say I disrespected their democracy. But what kind of democracy silences truth? What kind of democracy punishes honesty? Democracy is not about protecting the powerful. It is about empowering the people. And if a leader fears criticism, that leader fears democracy itself. When you cautioned me of diplomatic consequences, I laughed. Not because I do not appreciate your office, but because I learned from history. Every empire that thought it could silence truth through threats has bent. You cannot sanction integrity. You cannot isolate conscience. You cannot punish authenticity. The world is watching and they see through the facade. Let the record show I did not respond to your ultimatum with submission. I responded with conviction. Because men who serve truth do not count hours, they count legacies. You said I had 48 hours. I say you have a lifetime to face the consequences of ignoring your people. You said you would act. I already have by refusing to bow. I hope the Jamaican people can see this clearly. My statements were never against you. They were for you. When I spoke of corruption, I spoke for every child who studies by candlelight, while ministers dine in extravagance. When I spoke of leadership, I spoke for every nurse, every teacher, every farmer, who works hardest and gets so little. When I said that leadership is not ownership, I did not mean that power must always be responsive to the people, and that in Africa, in Jamaica, anywhere, Andrew Holness can speak to me in whatever manner. Radical, arrogant, disrespectful, it makes no difference. Because I have seen what silence does. I have seen nations disintegrating not because of enemies but because of cowardice. I will not be silent when black nations are being strangled to death by their own leaders. In the name of foreign loans and political loyalty, I will not be silent. While our people struggle like beggars on their own soil, I shall not apologize for saying we want better. You observe the issue is not that I spoke up. The issue is that I spoke too truthfully. You desire speeches that circumvent the truth. I do not. I speak directly because corruption is not poetic. Poverty is not polite. Injustice does not await permission, and neither do I. You wish to defend your image, Mr. Holness? Then construct hospitals, not stories. Feed your people, not your pride. Because history will not forget how many ultimatums you issued. It will remember if your people lived with dignity. And today the world sees that a man in Africa stood up for Jamaicans when their own government deemed it an insult. That is not my victory. That is your people's awakening. Let me tell you again so the world gets it. I will not apologize for standing with the people. Because the people are my only allegiance. Not foreign powers, not political leaders, not institutions created to oppress us. My allegiance is to justice, to truth, to the future we're building. One where black nations no longer plead, but construct, no longer copy but imagine, no longer serve but lead. So, no, I will not take back my words. I will not alter my beliefs. I will not seek your permission. Because truth is not required to ask for permission. Truth stands on its own. It does not fear punishment. It does not appease oppression. Truth, Mr. Holness, emancipated Jamaica once, and it is truth that will emancipate it again. You thought this threat would silence me? Instead, it has multiplied the voice of your people. You thought you could use nationalism to bury accountability. Instead, you have unearthed the spirit of resistance. You thought you were asserting sovereignty. Instead, you revealed fear. Because leaders who are confident of their integrity do not worry about questioning. Welcome it to their arms. You label me provocator. Maybe so. Because it is time to provoke. Not of chaos, but of conscience. We have slept too long in the comfort of falsehood. Our nations are worth better. Jamaica is worth better. Africa is worth better. We must stop treating truth as threat and start treating it as freedom. If talking truth makes me lose allies, I accept that loss. If it gains me ill will in diplomatic circles, I accept that estrangement because my dignity is not bargainable. My integrity is not for sale. My mandate is not to appease the powerful but to empower the powerless. Mr. Holness, you can redeploy your diplomats. You can withdraw your ambassadors. You can close your doors. But you cannot close the hearts of your people who have been awakened. The fire you sought to extinguish now burns bolder. And once ignited, that fire does not subside easily. It consumes in the hearts of the youth, in the courage of the workers, in the conscience of the poor who now know that someone had the heart to stand for them. Let the world publish its headlines. Traore defies ultimatum. Let the analysts debate. Let the elites panic. I am not here for headlines. I am here for history. Because long after these Microphones are turned off, long after these speeches are forgotten, the truth will be remembered. And the truth is plain. The time of silence has passed. The time of submission is ending. The age of awakened nations has arrived. I am not here to humiliate Jamaica, but to remind her of strength. You are not little. You are not weak. You are not silent. You are a nation forged by rebels and dreamers. Let politicians not make your pride obedience. Let it be your tool of change. As I leave this podium, I will not leave with fear. I will leave with faith. Faith in people, not politics. Faith in truth, not titles. Faith that the same spirit that freed Africa and the Caribbean will one day rise again. Because every generation has its test. This is ours. To choose between convenience and courage, between silence and truth. So no, Mr. Holness, I will not apologize. The countdown you gave me has expired, but what has started cannot be stagnated. The people have spoken. The youth have awakened. The silence is broken. You cannot put a time limit on truth. And you cannot intimidate a man who has already set himself free from fear. That is my response to your ultimatum. And to the people of Jamaica. Stand tall. Your voice is your power. Use it. Because leaders do come and go, but truth endures. And one day when history writes this chapter, it will not depict Ibrahim Traoré as having defied Andrew Holness. It will depict the Jamaicans as having defied silence.